Welcome once again to Cinemaholics, where we talk about the biggest and the best films coming to theaters and streaming online from the San Francisco Bay Area. My name is John Negroni. I'm the film editor for theyoungfolks.com. And you know what? I am turning green with envy because from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, he's a news and entertainment writer at Collider. And it's Will Ashton. Will Ashton, I'm envious of your position because you're wearing a bright blue, colorful, nice dress-down shirt. And look at me, I'm still in my PJs.
Oh, yeah, I'm all dressed for work. So I'm going to be... I don't know where I was really going with this.
I like to think that doing Cinemaholics isn't work, Will Ashton, but point taken.
No, yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, that's a good setup. Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about Turning Red, new Pixar movie. We're also talking about the Adam Project later in this show. Will, I wanted to bring something up about Turning Red. I don't know how you're going to feel about this. Okay.
All right.
There's a certain review that came out for this movie.
Yeah, I was wondering if you're going to address this.
Yes, and you know, I don't. People who listen to the show, they might be aware of what's going on here. They might also remember that back in the day, you used to work for an outlet called Cinema Blend, and I wanted to bring up this article. You don't work for Cinema Blend anymore.
No, I do not.
No intentional disparaging about to go on here of your former workplace, if that's if I may say so.
Sure,
but. With this review, it kind of made the rounds on Twitter. Is that fair to say?
Yes. Yeah. It became a big to-do.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, the managing editor, I think it was, of Cinema Blend. Yes.
Yeah. The managing director. Yeah.
Yes. He wrote an article about Turning Red, and very rarely, Walasha, in my time on social media, have I seen such a resounding, universal, no pun intended, just decrying of a film review. And the short version is that basically he wrote that he found the film exhausting because he didn't feel like it was for him and it was too specific, basically. Is that a fair characterization?
I mean, I think a lot of the criticism came from the fact that he said that previous Pixar movies were more quote unquote universal. Right. Which I think is more I think that was more the point of criticism than the exhausting part. The exhausting was just kind of the extra punch after that whole thing. So,
right, because people were like, "Yeah, it's okay if you don't like it. Like, whatever. You don't have to like a movie, right?" But it was just the criticism itself was just so whoa, that's kind of concerning. That's your read of films in general.
Yeah, that was the big thing for me, and I mean. I don't really want to talk about it too much because I don't really want to disparage Cinema Blend in general because they hired me. They wrote. I wrote for a few years there. I was paid pretty well. I got a lot. I got to write about film and got paid for it. So I'm not gonna disparage the experience. But
you don't have to disparage them. Yeah, we're just I do think it's important because I know people know that you used to be there. I didn't want to leave it unspoken.
Right. No, I mean, I think my main takeaway from this and what I hope happens from this is that it's a learning experience. I hope people take this and he takes it as an opportunity to learn that film reviewing or any form of art criticism is a matter of having an open and curious mind and an empathetic heart. You can't really go into this type of work without having some curiosity for what people are doing, especially artists in their work. And it seemed like the main issue that I took with his review, having read it, was that he just didn't really seem to want to engage with the film on its own terms. And he was trying to be defensive about it and say, this movie's not for me and all that stuff, which, there are how many films made for quote unquote not for them or whatever. It's not a matter of a film not being for somebody. It's a matter of you kind of trying to engage it. And you can make your point and be like, I don't think this movie works personally because of XYZ. That's what criticism is. But yeah, I mean, his whole dismissal of the film as it's only for a select few people in Canada or whatever, the filmmakers, friends and families, that it was just a poor review, unfortunately.
That's the one that rankled me. It was Domee Shi made this just for her friends, and that's the part that I was just oof. I wrote a little bit about this myself, and we should recognize he apologized. They took the review down, and it's not like this is some sort of we need to have a blood sacrifice or anything like that.
Right. Well, some people were saying that he should get fired and stuff like that. I don't think he should get fired. I just think he should learn from this experience. That's my main thing. Yeah.
teachable moment. But I think for me, I'm just kind of looking at this whole situation, and it is a little bit indicative of something that has been frustrating me in general with how I think like most film critics are approaching films these days. I shouldn't say most, I should just say many. I'm just getting this sense that like everything is just so binary when it comes to how we're talking about movies. I know you and I have had this conversation many times about like why we don't do grades anymore. You know, like it just seems like if your review comes down to like you quickly just sum up, okay, here's what the film is. It's not really for me. I don't think it's this. I do think it's this. I think that like reviews should be much more like engaging and written in a way that's not just about you. You know, like this is one thing too that I think one of the reasons I think it can be like a dangerous territory to like write a review with yourself in it too much and your personal experience is that it can sort of alienate other people who are reading it, because it's like, okay, that's your experience, but like I think when we're analyzing things and giving our perspectives, that's just like one piece of like trying to contextualize a movie for like the public. And I think that, yeah, this whole thing is a little indicative of something that's been frustrating me with like, I feel like a lot of reviews are just sort of like with the Batman, you know, it's just like, this didn't work for me. And like, that's it, you know, there's just like, leave it at that. And like, people just aren't really like discussing things. Maybe they're afraid of discourse, I don't know, but I'm happy to see that like Turning Red is, you know, certainly aside from this review, really like finding a lot of love and joy with people right now. And you know, but I'm curious, like I haven't seen a lot of backlash for this movie yet. I'm curious what people are going to start saying like once it settles, you know.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but yeah, I mean, that's my main thing from this whole debacle is I just think it's a very teachable moment for people to really, if they're going to go into film criticism as they already are in film criticism, the main thing is you really just have to go in with a great deal of empathy, and you have to really be open-minded about art. And I mean, one thing I really think, and not that I'm someone who's really in a position to give advice in life, but I do think it is important to really try to expand your horizons and see as many different films as possible, and try to go into them open-mindedly. And even if you don't really understand them, or if you don't really appreciate them, just kind of just like write about it, but not in a way that's dismissive or like, you know, not willing to engage with the art or the text. Just really approach film with a great deal of empathy and curiosity. And I think that's so crucial to exploring any form of art, really. So that's what I hope is a takeaway. Yeah.
We should be clear, by the way, that we're kind of making it sound like this was written by like a 22-year-old like newbie film critic, but no, it was written by, like we said, the managing editor of the publication, who's middle-aged. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if he's going to really learn from this experience or not. I think it's more of a teachable moment for anyone who's like, especially because I know we have a lot of younger listeners, and I think that's where I really want to like kind of stress. But I mean, certainly I hope he takes, you know, this all the criticism that he's been getting to heart, and learns that he should, you know, explore different films with a, you know, broader, more willing understanding to, you know, engage with films in their own terms.
I genuinely think that he just didn't like the movie. And sometimes when you don't like the movie that a lot of other people are really loving, and you feel like the odd person out, there can be this sort of like contrarian temptation, you know, to just sort of like, you know, be that person. And I think in this case it was like almost searching for reasons to sort of like be like, this is why the movie's actually bad. And like, if you can't, it's a tricky place to be in. If you can't do it properly and you can't do it in a way that's like fair to the film, you're going to invite a lot of backlash, you know, for good or bad. But that's, I guess we can actually just talk about this movie, because what about us? You know, like,
sure.
What's our deal with this movie?
Yeah. Oh, the only other thing I was going to mention about that is that as far as the publication, I know that they said that they were going to reassign the review, and at the time of this recording, they haven't published a new review
to make, Will Ashton. I'm just kidding.
No, I just didn't. I mean, that was the big thing. Then they said there'd be more editorial integrity, and they weren't really clear on that. So I'm not quite sure what this means for the publication moving forward. But I mean, I hope it's like I said, I hope it's a learning moment.
Yeah. I don't know how other people like edit reviews, because they were sort of saying like, oh, we didn't edit this properly. And I that kind of hit me a little interestingly, because when I edit things, I have had times where I've messaged the writer and I've been like, hey, you know, like I think that your point here might come across a little weird, or I've been like, hey, you graded this a certain way, but it's not like the grade isn't matching the writing.
Yeah.
Like for like sometimes people will give something like a 9 out of 10, but all they do is criticize the film. And I'm like, wait. Like this doesn't make sense. So
Which,
in general, editing is fun.
Yeah. At least you asked. I've had several experiences where the editor will just change my rating without directing me. And that is one of the most infuriating things ever for an editor to do. Yeah. I've
just like given advice. I've been like, you know, and there have been times when people haven't sent me their rating. And like, I know earlier I was being like, we don't do grades anymore, but I know I've done that with you, Will. And I've been like, if I had to guess, I'd say, you know, this feels like a 7, but what is it? And you know, that is whatever it is.
No, I mean, you're definitely one of the more considerate and thoughtful editors I've ever had. And that's no exaggeration.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
But I should get you to edit one of my things and see what happens then. You can get your revenge on me. But you know.
That's how you get canceled.
John, in this review of Titan, I don't think you need to use these words, these 4-letter words. Okay. Turning Red. This is the latest Pixar film. And listeners know, when it comes to Pixar, I'm all in. New Pixar movie is coming out, rain or shine. I'm going to be there. And I certainly owe a lot to the studio. Whenever a new Pixar movie comes out, I'm so anxious to watch it and enjoy it because the studio has a very specific track record. And, you know, people have been debating, you know, the current post John Lasseter era lately. And Turning Red, I think, is kind of one of the, it's coming in an interesting time because we're at the tail end of this is the 4th original they've done in a row, which is really incredible. That they have just sort of, since Toy Story 4, recommitted to doing original stories. A few of these with totally different filmmakers, I should say, 2 of them, so half of them. And after this, we're going to get Lightyear. We're going to get the sort of French New Wave Toy Story spinoff. That is a reference to another tweet that I absolutely adore. But, you know, anyway. So this movie I've been looking forward to a lot ever since it was announced that Domee Shi was directing it. Domee Shi directed Bao, the short film that opened Incredibles 2 back in 2018. So those were the days when we had gotten like Cars 3 and Incredibles 2 and Toy Story 4. And of course, I remember Finding Dory. We just gotten like a lot of prequels and spinoffs like over and over again with like, I think the only thing that was original around that time is Coco. So it was a bleak time, I think, for fans of like original Pixar movies. And Domee Shi came out with this short film called Bao, which was so weird. It was so uncomfortable, and I loved it so much. Every time I watched it, I had a reaction in the theater that I think other people in the theater were like horrified. I was just like smiling, clapping, and that kind of thing. Did we talk about Bao much when we did I know we talked about Incredibles 2 and everything, but
yeah, I'm sure we addressed it. You know, I think we usually address the short films that used to play before Pixar movies back in the days when they would get a theatrical release. Remember those? Yeah.
Barely.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, I remember enjoying it for sure. It was just such a bizarre, but yeah, like you said, uniquely kind of funny and touching, you know, metaphor of a short film. And I really
love Toby Chu's music in it.
Yeah. I remember it got one of the most audible like gasps I've ever heard in a movie theater during one crucial moment, like midway through, or I guess 3/4 of the way through. So there's certainly that. Yeah.
Well, not long before that came out, Domee Shi went to Pete Docter, who's the head of Pixar now creatively, and she pitched her own feature film idea, which is this movie Turning Red. And they announced it not long after that she would be directing her own movie. And I just, ever since then, I've been like, yes, I'm so excited for this. I think that she is one of the younger but more exciting voices at Pixar, and I think Turning Red absolutely like delivers on that. Like, I'm so happy with how this movie turned out. Now, to sort of set the stage for what it's about, Turning Red is very personal to Domee Shi's life, her experience growing up in Toronto, Canada. She is Asian, or Canadian, I should say Chinese Canadian. And this movie takes place in 2002. And obviously it's not a literal sort of like this happened to me, because it's kind of like a fantastical movie, but obviously it's a metaphor, allegory. It's borrowing things from her personal life, very personal film. Hence the whole opening thing we talked about, you know, connecting with like a very specific story and all of that. Now, the way this movie is being described is that it's a coming of age fantasy comedy, and animated, obviously. It's kind of like if I had to assign a genre to it, it's like middle grade, that kind of thing. Now, this is Domee Shi's first feature film. The screenplay she co-wrote with Julia Cho, and Julia Cho, I don't know if you're as familiar with her work, but she's like a TV writer and a playwright. She did a few things that I haven't seen, but I think this is like her first Pixar feature, so interesting there. This was also produced by Lindsay Collins, who I think was Domee Shi's producing partner for Bao, if I'm not mistaken. Now, anyway, the movie stars Mei Lin, or just Mei, who is a 13-year-old Chinese-Canadian student, and she's voiced by Rosalie Chang. And she is kind of like this precocious, hyperactive, like I march to the beat of my own drum, if that's fair to say. And she has like a tight-knit group of friends. And as we mentioned, she lives in Toronto. She works at this Chinese temple that her house is in with her mom. Her mom is voiced by Sandra Oh. They have a very like lovely like relationship. I mentioned this in my review that like when the movie was kind of getting going, I didn't watch the trailers, but I watched the teaser, and I was a little nervous that they were just going to sort of redux the mother-daughter relationship in Brave, or maybe in a lot of other animated films we've seen before, where it's like, okay, the mom, the daughter aren't going to get along, and they're going to bicker, and the movie's going to be about how they stop doing that. But no, where the movie starts is like her mom is very cringe, like extraordinarily cringe. To the point where like I was watching this movie and I had to stop it because I was just like, I was dying of embarrassment on May's behalf. But the movie starts on a note of like this mother and daughter just being really good friends and having a really healthy, positive relationship in a lot of ways. And I thought that was really nice. And that's like the movie started off on a good note. Now, where the story goes is that she, all of a sudden, for reasons I won't explain because I'll let the movie do that, she transforms into a giant red panda whenever she gets excited. And when this happens for the first time, her mother like thinks that she's like on her period because she hears her like having a huge meltdown. And that's when I was just like, oh my gosh, Pixar's going there. Like they're actually doing jokes about menstrual cycles in a kid's movie. And I'm like, God bless Domee Shi. Domee Shi is the future of Pixar because this movie is hilarious, it's heartwarming, it's touching, and it's deliciously weird. I don't know if deliciously is the right word, but I'm thinking of like the food in this movie is amazing. I'll say deliriously weird. I'll change it to that. A very weird but very fun and touching pop kind of movie, and also very accessible. I was a little nervous that like maybe this wouldn't be like approachable for some like mainstream audiences because it's like kind of like 2002. Are kids gonna get this because of the time period? But no, I think it has that like sort of timeless Pixar feel. Like I almost wonder if they even needed to say it was 2002, maybe to get around like why aren't people on their phones all the time and all that stuff. But no, I think that placing in that time is very specific too, because Malin and her friends are obsessed with a boy band called Four Town. And I guess that wouldn't really make sense if it wasn't in 2002. I could keep going and going and going, but I wanted to turn it to you, Will. What did you think of Turning Red? Were you into this movie?
I was, yeah. I mean, as you, I think, mentioned before, we're in this kind of interesting Pete Docter phase for Pixar where, I guess going with like Soul and Luca and now with Turning Red, we are seeing more movies from like the new branch of Pixar, the younger filmmakers who are coming. I know Pete Docter directed Soul, but right. But especially with Luca and this film, we're seeing kind of like a new phase where they're experimenting with their style more. They're adding kind of more of like buoyancy and rhythm to animation. So there's like a classical Pixar style that is still incorporated, but especially with this movie and Luca before it, like Luca, you could definitely see odes to not only the Italian neorealism, but like the Studio Ghibli movies. And here we have like kind of a more of an anime 2D sensibility, but in 3D form. That's really exciting, and it gives like a real exuberance to this film that not only makes it sad that we didn't get to see in theaters, but just feels so much like, okay, Pixar really is still even 20-something films and really willing to push themselves and experiment and not ever settle. And that's what I find really exciting. But even more than that, as you mentioned, it's just such a fun, warm, personal story as well that I think, as a lot of people have been mentioning online recently, the fact that it is so specific and so true to the filmmaker's own life, so as I can only assume, it does have something that feels very universal as a result. It feels very relatable. It has something that feels very, heartfelt and sincere, and it uses such creativity and nuance to tell that story in a fun and really inspired way. And so, yeah, I mean, definitely, it's what I really like in seeing from Pixar at this stage in a game. And I don't know if it quite reaches the same heights as some of their previous films, but certainly just makes me feel really inspired for what they're doing for the next leg of their company's career.
Yeah, I've only seen this movie once. I'm very excited to watch it again because there's a lot of subtle stuff here. And I know one of my concerns going into it was, well, once again, Pixar is sort of releasing a version of a movie that a bunch of other studios have maybe sort of superficially started kind of doing, which is doing like a Chinese, Canadian, or sort of like, coming of age Chinese movie. So we've got movies like not coming over the moon, but Over the Moon, Wish Dragon. Movies that have like, young Asian Americanized protagonists, basically like North Americanized. Yeah. And, we've gotten a few of those, and it's like, okay, here's Pixar's. It's kind of like when, I'm not comparing these like unfairly, because it reminds me of like how Coco comes out years after Book of Life, and people will be like, oh, it's just Book of Life, and in this case, I guess it's not as big of a deal because I don't think a lot of people watched Over the Moon or anything like that, but very similar movies in terms of like using, I think, like Chinese mythology too, and sort of like there's stuff in here about like ancestors and like ritualistic stuff and everything. But there's also a lot of just like small touches of just like Chinese life, like little things of like Malin's family and like specific ways they do things. And it's actually done really well here because I just doing it the Pixar way, I guess, with like where stuff is just sort of there. It's atmospheric. It's not like, I don't know if hyped upon is the right phrasing, but I don't think it's like, dwelled on, I suppose, it just sort of like normal for these characters. And so like going through it, I just felt like I was in this place. I was pretty immersed. I do have one criticism though about some of the world building, and is it just me? I haven't seen anybody else say this. I think the characters pop and look really great. I think the red panda design is amazing. I love that panda. But Toronto itself, I didn't find a very like visually interesting location. Like it felt like it was kind of washed out to me. Like, I don't know. I didn't find it as like textured and like wonderful to look at like I did in like New York City and Seoul, for example.
Yeah, I was wondering, maybe because the story is so central to, the family and then the select few friends that we focus on, but we really only get like a handful of locations here in this, like, is it Toronto or is it just
Toronto?
It is Toronto. Okay. We only really see like the city a couple times. Like we only, we mostly say in like the house and the school, and, occasionally we'll go to a different location. But for the most part, I feel like we don't really get to explore Toronto that much. That might
There's a
explain
scene where
why.
She's running through the streets, and that's where I really noticed it. That's
the exception to the rule, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, like, I've been to Toronto. Toronto is a beautiful place. The Chinatown in Toronto, it's so cool. It's so lovely. Yeah, yeah, it's super close to where you are, huh? And... but yeah, I'm just kind of
just
like
need a passport, but yeah,
that's all. That's all.
Yeah,
you have to get past the Mounties. You can try. But no, I genuinely find it to be a very beautiful place. And I don't know, I think that what they were going for was just sort of like this washed out style to make the red panda pop out more, I guess, because you certainly get that across in the school. Like the panda is like this larger than life creature, and I guess it works on that level. But I don't know, I was kind of hoping for a little bit more of that like Pixar style in the locations. I don't know why, maybe on the second viewing I won't be as critical about that. I don't know.
Oh, no. I mean, was this being made during the pandemic? I mean, I know it had to be in part, but did it start was the pre-production process before?
It was before, because she pitched the idea in 2018, late 2017, around then.
I just didn't know if because I know Pixar takes great lengths to, study locations. Like I remember when I saw Finding Nemo on like the DVD, they talked about how like laborious it was to really like study like oceanside footage and stuff like that to capture it. And I wasn't sure if because of the pandemic, they couldn't really like go to Toronto and really explore it more. That might be one reason, but that's just me speculating at this point.
Yeah, that's hard to say for sure, especially because she grew up there, and I think
yeah, well, that's the other thing too, right? Is that like she actually grew up there,
they had a couple of years to develop this, because like again, it was like late 2017, early 2018, and pandemic wasn't until a few years after that, and I think they had about like 2 years of pre-production before they got into it, and then they started to develop it. But yeah, I see your point. I also wanted to highlight Billie Eilish and Phineas O'Connell developed the original songs for the band Four Town. There's like 2 or 3 of them in this movie, and they're wonderful. Phineas O'Connell voices one of the boy band
is
characters.
That true?
Yeah, I forget which one.
Yeah.
But wonderful. I think like this whole movie is like sort of a boy band early 2000s obsession. It like gives it like a signature, right? Like it gives it its own sort of like memorable style. It makes the movie stick out of my mind better. Like I'm really glad, like I know I was kind of like harping on this earlier, but like I am kind of glad that they did go with the 2002 thing, because now that I'm thinking about it, I think that if they had just made it this sort of like generic, like this might be whenever kind of thing, like present day maybe, that they usually do with a Pixar movie, I don't think it would have had like this much like fun, right?
Yeah, I mean that actually, because I've seen some people compare this movie to Mitchell's versus the Machines, and even though I'm slightly,
I did in my review.
Sure, even though I have expressed criticism just in comparison to other people, one of my chief criticisms about that movie was that it's supposed to be taking place modern day, but there's a very like 2009 sensibility. Like the character feels like she's like coming of age in the decade prior, and I felt like that
she's ahead of her time, Melashton.
Well, no, she's behind the time there, because it just feels like a disassociation. Like it feels like this is something more true to the filmmaker's background than the character trying to project. And I felt like this approach in comparison was much more agreeable, because by stamping it in 2002, it feels so much more specific, and it gives itself the freedom to be more attuned to that time period and true to what the filmmaker's actual, upbringing and coming of age years were. Whereas there's, like I said, sort of a disassociation I felt with Mitchell's versus Machine.
I want to debate that. I do want to debate that with you for at least 50 minutes, but I can't. But for now, I'll just say, no, I do agree with you in that sense. I think like May and her group of friends, a lovely group of friends, they are like very like of that era. Like when we were, I mean, for me, I was in middle school around this time, and I certainly was like recognizing a lot of, I know for me it was in like the East Coast American, sort of middle school, and this is Canadian, so it's different in some ways, but we haven't mentioned like kind of like the mechanics of the plot, and that's because I didn't want to give anything away for like where the story goes. But we get to spend a lot of time with May and her group of friends, and they're really just funny and fun and light. And there's this whole subplot about how May, she kind of figures out that like maybe part of how I can sort of calm down and control this like a beast inside me is when I think about my friends. And I don't know, it's just really touching stuff. I have noticed that this movie, I don't know if other people have been like crying during this movie, but I didn't think it had like a huge like cry emotional punch, but I appreciated that. It was because it wasn't trying to, I didn't think. I think it was just trying to be like sweet. Do you disagree?
I mean, it's been established many times on this podcast, I'm a robot. I don't cry in movies because I'm just not connected to my emotions, I guess. But there is a moment, there is that classical Pixar climactic scene.
Really?
And it's hard to describe.
I didn't think it was going for the tears as hard.
I thought the fact that it had such a scene like that, but it wasn't, it was so much more emotional as opposed to like, there's like no like montage scene, or not montage, monologue scene. I mean, like it's something
montage
like Onward.
Either, because Onward had that.
Well, no, but I mean like, in Onward, there's like a very classical, like old Pixar sort of scene where it's like characters giving like a heartfelt monologue. It's like, this is why I act this way. Don't you understand? And not to say that movie is bad or anything. I think it's fine. But like, there's a scene in this movie where they could have done something like that. And said they did something a little bit more intuitive and a little bit more what I felt was emotionally resonant. And that was ultimately one scene that I think really stands out and makes this movie feel so special to me, is that it trusts the audience enough to just let the emotion of the scene play out in a way that is visually stunning, but also emotionally sincere. And I thought like that was like a pretty classical, like it didn't make me cry because like I said, I don't cry in movies, but I didn't either. Yeah. But my eyes did water a little bit during that scene because I just found it to be kind of a touching little moment.
I agree completely. I mean, my eyes didn't water anything, but like, yeah, I think that they broke the formula a little bit. Like they went for that sort of thing differently, which I appreciate. And I appreciate a lot about this movie is it's very different. It's a funnier Pixar movie than we usually get. It is trying to be something stylistically, like you mentioned, like I was thinking about anime a lot in this because they let the character, like they animate her to sort of, it's like through her imagination, right? It has that sort of like, she dreams certain things and like characters kind of float and do weird things. And like usually Pixar's a little bit more like they try to keep things more grounded and more like within the realm of physics or Pixar physics. Not in this movie. They let it be a little bit more whimsical, a little bit more cartoonish. And that's risky for Pixar because their brand is sort of like, we're the prestigious animation house, right? Like they don't usually take a risk like this. And I even remember like in the lead up to this movie, people were looking at some of the promotional stills and were just like, this looks like a DreamWorks movie. Which is like awful thing to say because DreamWorks makes really great stuff. And I think it's absolutely ridiculous to like sort of be like, well, Pixar's, that's real animation business. And like DreamWorks is this lesser, like, come on, get out of here.
I mean, their success rate is less consistent. I think that's fair to say.
Sure, but
I get what you mean.
I think it's so demeaning and so diminishing to just like use DreamWorks as like a pejorative. Illumination is sure, but not DreamWorks.
Yeah, we can attack one corporation, but not the other, right?
There you go. Well, yes, I notoriously am not a fan of Illumination. But I would not purposely I would not in a mean-spirited way try to bring down Illumination because they do good work. They make a product that resonates with a lot of people. I won't deny that.
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, I feel like if you see a Pixar movie, you can typically get like an A level film. If you watch a DreamWorks film, you can probably get something in B territory, sometimes C, but usually somewhere in between. Like usually you can get like a nice B or even an A level movie from DreamWorks, and Illumination's like firmly in C territory with the like occasional B. But yeah, that's basically the lineup there. Yeah, I guess
fair rundown. I'm really happy with how this movie turned out. I did want to bring up too that I know that there's been a little bit of chatter about whether or not this movie, has, and it was supposed to have more LGBTQ representation. Some people kind of like hinting that like there might have been more direct references, like similar to what we saw in Onward, but maybe more so. But employees have spoken out and been like, Disney doesn't let us do that. Like we try to do that, and then they just like erase like any reference to like this character identifies as asexual or this character identifies as bisexual, stuff like that. And I know a lot of people have been speculating that like, some of the characters in here are sort of coded to be bisexual. But did you pick up on any of that? Yeah,
because well, for one, obviously, Disney is going through its share of problems with the LGBT community right now. That's a whole other can of worms. But and I don't feel like discussing that. You guys can do your homework if you don't know what we're talking about. But
that would require an entire episode of the show to get into. Yeah.
But yeah, there's at least I don't remember the friend's name, so I apologize. But
Priya.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, Priya is like kind of there's like a scene where they're at the party, and it's implied that she has like sort of romantic feelings for another person at the party. And I thought it was going to be suggested that they were going to have like a sort of like fledgling romance, and then they keep pushing it like she's attracted to at least one of the members of Four Town. So yeah, it's like it's suggested she's either bisexual or gay, but then they just like it didn't feel like consistent enough, and it felt like I don't know, it seemed like there was something there they wanted to explore, but obviously Disney probably didn't want to. And that was one of the bigger examples I saw of something like that. But I don't know if that you got that read either.
From Priya, that's the character I thought they were going more for an asexual thing. Personally, I thought that they were going more for Miriam because like she is like a tomboy more, and not that I like that term.
I get it. Right. I get what you mean.
Yeah. I think that was a little bit more of like she, especially because there's a moment when May's mother is a little bit like, there's something about that Miriam that I don't like. And there was I think that I saw some people saying like, that reminds me a lot of like, I had this friend growing up who, my parents like didn't approve of, and they weren't clear about why they didn't approve of them. And so that certainly stuck out to me. And I did wonder, like, is that kind of where they're going with this? But yeah, they don't really do anything with it. And it is one of those things that like, yeah, I think that Pixar just it's one of those things like I wish Pixar was more independent again and not so like beholden to Disney, because I do think there are people at Pixar, a lot of people at Pixar, including Pete Docter, who would go a little bit farther with that sort of thing and be more courageous, but they can't, or they won't. Yeah. And it's unfortunate.
Is that even feasible though at this point, especially given how much Disney has screwed them over of late? I have kind of wondered if that was something they could explore, the idea of just, kind of getting their own, because Pixar is a brand at this point, and theoretically they could, they could establish themselves on their own. It would be tricky, of course, and they probably wouldn't have the same budgets, but they could at least, get some clout and kind of build themselves. But I don't know, is that even a possibility at this point?
I don't even think, like, if it's a possibility, it's so remote as to be completely negligible, because like you say, Pixar is so inextricably financially tied to Disney at this point, because we should state, Disney makes the vast majority of their money through the parks, and they have invested a lot of money into the Pixar brand being a big part of the parks. Like Disneyland has an entire area devoted just to Pixar movies. And so for them to break out on their own and to try to do some sort of deal like that with Disney, where it's yeah, you can use our stuff for, it's never going to happen, because Disney is not in the business of making really good or helping or facilitating great movies from Pixar. They're in the business of franchises through Pixar that they can turn into money through the parks. That's where they're at. Yeah. Right. So that's kind of why I think they're making decisions like this, where they're sort of being it's okay to take a huge financial loss and put Turning Red, just put it right to Disney Plus, because in their eyes, the original things that they're creating just are not clicking. They are just not making it work in theaters in their eyes, right? And they aren't willing to take that risk.
They're not putting the effort in either. They're not. They're promoting the movies, but in Encanto, they really didn't push the theatrical release that much. But they really stressed upon the Disney Plus release, it seems like. And
there's a bias there for that in Raya and the Last Dragon, because those are Walt Disney Animation, the in-house animation studios, right?
Yeah.
And to them, there's a theatrical tradition. Whereas Pixar, they're the upstarts. They're the ones they're a little bit more modern. We can just put them in, unless, of course, it's a sequel to Finding Nemo, because that is going to make over $1 billion. And that's the thing that frustrates me, is this sort of Pixar has done so much for Disney. Those movies saved Disney's animation, theatrical business.
They just copied and paste their model pretty much. All these, Disney movies of later they're just trying to do what Pixar did. They're copying their homework to the point where people are man, I was talking to somebody recently, and they were there's been so many Pixar movies recently, and they were mentioning Encanto and Raya and the Last Dragon. No, those are Disney
Ralph
movies.
Breaks the Internet.
Right. Yeah. No, but honestly, people they think they're having trouble differentiating these things. I just think, for the layman, I guess they're not really seeing the difference. And that's probably part of Disney's plan. They're just trying to get that critical and commercial clout, but they're using it for very exploitative reasons. And, I wish I could say this was, just an exception, but this seems to be kind of part of the course for what Disney is going for right now. And yeah, it's just incredibly frustrating stuff.
As it usually happens, I feel we could talk for another half hour about Disney and Pixar and all that fun stuff. But of course, we have to move on. I think we can safely say that we both really like this movie. It's quite good, and it's on Disney Plus. It's really accessible. I'm sad that I didn't get to watch it in a theater yet again. I haven't seen a new Pixar movie in the theater in so long, since Onward.
Yeah. Onward is the last one for me, obviously. And I know that Luca got a brief theatrical release. Did this get one too?
I think what you're mentioning is it played in a couple of specialty theaters,
right? Yeah,
an
in awards
LA.
Run. Yeah,
but not a lot of places.
Happen?
This one, I know this played in Toronto. One or two theaters, and then I think it also played at the Chinese theater or the El Capitan. Actually, El Capitan.
Yeah. Well, that's what happened with Luca last year.
Yeah, and it's just a limited run, very specialized. And it is being released theatrically in some countries that don't have Disney Plus. We should mention. I don't know which countries those are, because Disney Plus is available in a lot of countries. But there are some places where you can watch it in a theater. If you're in North America like us, good luck. Kind of difficult too, but. I would absolutely love to do a Pixar-a-thon, of where a theater in our local areas, just hey, we got the rights to be able to play a bunch of these original Pixar movies that didn't play theatrically during the pandemic come out. We're going to play Luca, Soul, Turning Red. I would adore that.
Yeah, especially Soul. I'd love to see that in theaters. Because I was thinking about this. Warner Brothers released Scoob in theaters a year after it went to HBO Max, And recently I saw that I guess Amazon put Hotel Transylvania 4 in theaters for, I think, a limited
Did they
run.
really?
I'm not,
Huh.
Yeah. And I mean, this could just be locally. I don't know. I mean, I can't speak for every city. This is just in my neck of the woods. But I was kind of wondering about that. I was just like, like nothing against those movies. Well, something against Scoob, because that movie was just god awful. But,
Whoa, they're playing Turning Red in Oakland.
Oh, really?
I just looked it up, and I had an inkling. I was like, wait, I feel like they might be playing it around here. And they are. Wow. They're playing it at the Grand Lake Theater, that theater that they reference in Up.
Yeah.
Wonderful theater.
There you go.
I know what I'm doing later. Anyway.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, it's good to hear.
There's a chance it could be playing near you. You just look it up. Use Google machine.
Yeah, I'll have to check the old Google. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just know that like Hotel Transylvania 4 and Scoob got a belated theatrical run. Now it's like, well, where's this love for Luca? Where's this love for, for Soul? Like these movies I would actually want to see in theaters. I could, give a heck about seeing Hotel Transylvania 4 in theaters, but I'd like to see these ones in theaters. Why not?
Watch your language, will Ashton, but
a darn or what's a PG movie? I don't want to like.
Of course,
I don't want to bring out my arsenal of.
You're turning red right now. You look like anger from inside out. All right. I guess that's a sign we should probably move into the Rotten Tomatoes game. And I forgot to mention, it's also a quick movie, just 100 minutes, clean hour 40. Very, very fun watch, very breezy watch. But how is it doing with critics? I think we already kind of alluded that it's doing pretty well with critics. I think that's undeniable. So, Will, this might be a little easy for you to guess the Rotten Tomatoes score to get close. But yeah, what do you think? We have 178 reviews counted. Not a lot, surprisingly, for a new Pixar movie. I mean, by comparison, Batman was 399?
Sure.
That's kind of wild. Okay, what do you think the RT score is as the time we're recording this?
My gut says 93%.
Quite close, 95%, just a little bit higher, but it's fluctuating still. I think that it's going to get more reviews over the course of the weekend, and so we'll see if it goes higher or lower. But yeah, certified fresh. But okay, audience score, we have 500 plus ratings. What do you think?
I guess there's always a possibility that like some vocal group is like really against this movie because it portrays the, I don't know, female experience or whatever. But
yeah, it's like, like people of color exist. That means it's woke, and that means I hate it.
I don't know.
There's that attitude, isn't there?
Or like the idea that like it shows like maxi pads, so like acknowledging that menstruation is a thing.
Horror?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know,
but
I don't know if that's going to play a factor. But I imagine probably like 80-something% of people are probably cool and enjoy this movie. So I'm going to say 82%.
68%.
Okay, so there are people who are getting mad about this, I guess.
They are.
Is that
It's
really?
kind of weird. Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of
and so I was right?
Well, I'm reading. It's so dumb. Leftist political ideologies. Like, come on, you don't even know what those words mean. If you're saying this is a leftist political movie, like, okay, you are clearly deranged.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just think that's the audience score,
Yeah.
But okay, what about and I took a look at Letterboxd and Rotten Tomatoes, and like nobody in my sort of like nobody I follow on Letterboxd and nobody who was like rotten on the film, none of them are people that I like particularly like follow. So yeah, it's like a universal
harsh
praise.
Words for Sean O'Connell.
Oh
no, okay. Sorry for that.
I don't follow him on here, so that is the case.
I know, yeah.
And it's not on Rotten Tomatoes anymore, so.
Oh, it's not? Yeah, I didn't know.
No.
Yeah, I was looking up. It looks like my lowest letterbox score is like a 3 out of 5, which is still good. It's still positive. So
lowest for me is 3.5 from like a couple people, and that's it.
Wow.
Including Allie Johnson, who reviewed it for us on theyoungfolks.com. She gave it a 3.5.
Yeah, shout out to Allie. Yeah. 3.8.
So you are guessing the average letterbox score right now.
Yeah, I only looked at my friend's score. I to be clear, I did not look at the actual.
No problem.
Rating. Yeah.
So it has 35,000 watches on Letterboxd right now. The average rating. So your guess is 3.8.
Mm-hmm.
That's quite close. 3.9. Nice. So yeah, turn that frown upside. That is Turning Red. It is now able to stream on Disney Plus and I think we can probably safely say this is going to win the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature next year. I'd have to double check what else is hitting, but I mean, Lightyear is the other Pixar movie this year, and I forget what Disney. Disney has like something coming out, I think, but I don't remember what. Well,
there's Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio coming up, which I'm very, very excited for. Unironically very excited for that. And then there's the new Harry Salick movie, the one he did with Jordan Peele.
Here's the thing, though.
Wendell and what was it called? Wendell and something. Yeah,
I don't remember, but I just think that if a Pixar movie comes out and people really like it and it's original, like I just think that's like, don't even bother. I think like a lot of people tend to. Although this year is kind of interesting. I'm curious if Luca is actually. I don't know if Luca's going to win. I think Mitchell's versus Machines has a serious shot.
I mean, I'm pretty certain it's going to be Encanto at this point, but
Encanto could. I could see it want to be in one of those three, and I like all three of those movies. So
yeah. I mean, I would be shocked if it wasn't Encanto at this point, unless Netflix really puts the pedal to the metal for. Like you said, giving Mitchell's versus the Machine.
Well, they have been, because I get the for your consideration boxes, and I get so much stuff for Mitchell's versus the Machines. I've got nothing for Encanto, nothing for Luca. So it has, obviously that's super anecdotal, and it's not really like going to decide anything. But I do think it's telling that Netflix is really pushing that movie. But anyway,
sure. Well, that's why I think Robin's probably going to win Best Animated Short Film. But I don't know. I mean, I think it'll be a pretty contentious Best Animated Feature category, but we'll see.
I agree with you there. All right. Well, we have one more maybe to do before we let you all go, before we say goodbye and good night. We're going to talk about the Adam Project. Now, that's Adam spelled Adam, not Atom, right?
Atom, yeah.
This is a kind of a sci-fi action comedy. Like, it's not super funny, but it like has jokes, I guess. But I don't know. I feel weird calling it a comedy, but it's I guess if you had to skew it, it's like closer to comedy than drama, but it's both.
It's very quippy.
Yeah, very quippy, like very Marvel-y. This movie is basically Guardians of the Galaxy, like, exists, and we want to do a version of it to the point where they even cast Zoe Saldana.
Yeah, highest grossing actress in the world, right? Is she still the highest?
Yeah, between Avatar and Avengers, Infinity War and Endgame. Yeah,
and Star Trek. Star Trek, yeah.
Star Trek too, but I mean Avatar and Endgame are the two highest grossing movies of all time. And she's one of the main characters in both.
Was she was in Endgame, right? Like briefly? Yeah.
I know she was in quite a bit.
Well, I know for sure she was in Infinity War, but I couldn't remember for certain if she was in
we get the new Gamora in Endgame.
Right, that's right, yeah. But
anyway, this new movie is called The Adam Project, and it's not a Marvel movie, but it certainly, understands that Marvel movies exist and make money. Well, let's put it that way. But so this movie follows a man named Adam Reed who lives in the year 2050. He is a pilot, and he steals what's called a time jet because he's going on a time travel rescue mission to the year 2018, but he accidentally crash lands in 2022, where he meets his 12-year-old self, and the pilot is played by Ryan Reynolds, and the boy that he meets, his like younger version, is played by Walker Scobell, who I think this is one of his first roles because I didn't recognize him. But basically, he's trying to get he's trying to get to 2018 for reasons that the movie reveals over time. And he's being pursued by the leader of this like dystopian time travel corporation played by Catherine Keener, Catherine Keener, she's good at playing a good villain. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, I think the last time I remember her being a villainous character was like Get Out.
Well, yeah, I mean, she's a great actress, but just I gotta be honest, she's not good in this movie. Like I didn't think she was very good either. So I'm glad you said that, because I was gonna feel kind of bad for not really like. But it's not like she's like trying. That's the thing, right? It just seems like she's incredibly bored. Like, obviously this project is beneath her, and these roles are beneath her.
This Adam Project is beneath her?
Yeah, but it's just like, it looked like she needed a cup of coffee or something. She just like had no energy in this role at all. And it's supposed to be like the lead villain, and it's just like, it looks so sleepy.
Yeah, fair enough. Mark Ruffalo and Jennifer Garner are also in this movie. And this was supposed to be a Tom Cruise movie. They were working on this. It was originally called Our Name is Adam, They announced it back in, I think, like 2012, I want to say, and Paramount was going to make it with Tom Cruise playing the Ryan Reynolds character. The script was written by T.S. Nolan, and it kind of just died. They never made it.
Tom Cruise doesn't age. So it's kind of a trouble.
Yeah. Just like cast him as his 12-year-old self.
It's just, yeah.
But they brought it back in 2020 with Sean Levy directing it. They moved it to Netflix. Obviously, Netflix and Paramount have a pretty like symbiotic relationship, although Paramount more and more is kind of striking out on their own with their own streaming service, which I think is yikes. Because I do think that like Paramount is Paramount Plus doing well. I don't want to tangent off on that, but I'm just kind of like curious, like, how is that working out for them, Viacom in general?
I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming 1883 is a sizable hit, but I mean, I don't like if I talk about Paramount Plus, most people I talk to don't have it. You know, it's kind of the same with Peacock. So it's one of those where it's like people
at least
know
Peacock
about them.
Though has like a lot of, you know, shows that people are like, we got to watch.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I think Paramount Plus is like, I'm looking at the stats and they have 32.8 million members. That's not bad. It could be way worse.
It seems like it's very okay. The main thing with them is that they're kind of like in an identity crisis. They really don't know what to be pushing or like what they want their streaming service to be.
Right.
So yeah, that's but that's not related to the Atom Project,
which is a Netflix movie. Well, Netflix, which has like 200 million, 300 million subscribers, whatever it is. But so Sean Levy directed Ryan Reynolds' last film, or one of his last films, which was Free Guy. I guess his last one was like Red Notice or whatever, but Free Guy, which was one of the big box office surprise hits of 2021. And so they're back together again with like I think this is a revised version of the script, because T.S. Nolan did the spec script, and then Jonathan Tropper, Jennifer Flackett, and Mark Levin worked on a new version of the script. It's very hacked, this script. Like, it's really all over the place. I don't hate this movie, to be honest with you. I think it's okay. I think it's like kind of grating at times. Like, there are times when, especially when it's just Ryan Reynolds and Walker Scobell just sort of like arguing with each other. I'm just like, can we move on? This is not interesting. Like, I don't think they have any sort of like, I don't know. I don't believe that they're the same person, but like one's older, like at all. Like, is it a casting issue? Like, what is going on here? I don't know. And also that Mark Ruffalo is their dad. No, they don't look anything like, I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah. That was even more bizarre. Yeah. And then, I mean, the kid is fine. Like, certainly the film's problems do not belong to him. But I imagine the casting process was just like, can you do those quips the way Ryan Reynolds does?
Exactly.
Perfect.
That's why it's weird. Because like, I don't think the kid is bad, but it's like they're trying to make him act like Ryan Reynolds. And it's like, he clearly is uncomfortable with it, because who talks like Ryan Reynolds besides Ryan Reynolds? It's weird.
What's the weird thing is that like, even like Jennifer Garner and like Mark Ruffalo and at times Catherine Keener are talking like Ryan Reynolds. It got to the point where it's like, did Ryan Reynolds write this script? Because like he was a screenwriter on Deadpool 2. So, you know, he is, you know, in the writings guild now. So I was like, yeah, is he writing scripts now for his movies? I didn't know.
He might as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I think that like Ryan Reynolds himself is okay in this, but like we kind of mentioned the Guardians of the Galaxy thing. And part of the reason it's stylistically so much of a piece with that is they do the thing where it's like, you know, flying spaceships and playing old music and, you know, having parental issues. And it's just like, he's just kind of doing a redux of Chris Pratt's Peter Quill from those movies down to his love interest is Zoe Saldana. Like, who are they trying to fool here? Like, it's really weird.
Yeah, I mean, without getting ahead of myself, I think I'm certainly more negative on this film than you are. I'm going to say it's an outright bad film. I
wouldn't say it's bad. I think it's just super mediocre.
Well, that's the problem, right? Because it's like we have, you know, an original blockbuster and, you know, obviously it's a Netflix movie, but this is one of the few, you know, not based on IP or pre-established property movies of this vein we're going to get. And it's just like you said, so aggressively mediocre to a point where it's like this feels like 100-minute car commercial. Like, it has no established stakes. Like, stuff happens and there's a lot of whizzing cameras and like people need to go places, but there's no sense of tension.
Yeah, there is a moment where they even say it's like, we have to stop time travel from ever happening. I'm like, wait, why? Like, I didn't really
Yeah.
understand the stakes very much.
Well, I mean, they talk about like stakes as far as like this is bad if things go bad, but
Yeah, the
like,
future is like Terminator, but worse.
Right, but then like like even Mark Ruffalo would be like, you guys can't mess with the time continuum or whatever, and it's like, okay,
why not?
And then they're like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah, you know what, whatever, we'll just keep talking.
Well, no, but they literally are just
cool.
like, well, it doesn't matter, it's fine, and he keeps going, and it's so annoying. He's just like, you can't do it, and they're just like, dude, like, we already have. Like, and he's like, you can't even talk to me right now. It's like, can you calm down?
Yeah.
It's a little weird, but you know what? Well, I do have to push back a little bit.
Okay.
Because, I certainly believe that you did not care for this movie, but I do think that its mediocrity is going to kind of be a feature point for a lot of people. I can see a lot of people liking this. I don't know if you agree, but like this to me screams sort of like family friendly, approachable, sort of like it's kind of family friendly. It's very PG-13, but very much like sci-fi family films of the past, but like sort of updated. And I could see people watching this being like, hey, I liked that. Now, not people being like, that was amazing, that was so good, but people are going to be like, that was nice, I'd watch that again.
Sure. And I mean, by all means, if they like it, I'm not going to take that away from them, but that doesn't diminish my dissatisfaction with the film. But yeah, I mean, the weird thing for me is that this movie, I think more than anything, I had to find a way to kind of preoccupy my mind watching this. I just kept thinking a lot about like where Ryan Reynolds is in his career at this point. And, like he's had such
he's coasting and loving it.
Yes, that's what I mean. So like we're at this point now where he had a few years there, like, he kind of found his fame with Van Wilder. Mm-hmm. He, kept trying to really get into like the blockbuster scene, like he did the X-Men Origins Wolverine. He had like, like even like a movie like The Proposal, which isn't like a traditional blockbuster, but he was like kind of trying his hand at like Just Friends, like
Just Friends, definitely, maybe, just like that.
Sure,
leading.
Yeah,
man.
I mean, he just kind of just like, hey, I'm handsome, I'm funny. Leading man, right? Even like something like Waiting, where it's just like, hey, I'm funny, I'm handsome, I'm a lead, right? And everyone just kind of like, yeah, like, I guess, yeah, sure. And he never really quite found that lead part. And obviously during this time he was trying to get Deadpool off the ground and wasn't really coming to be. So there was this period of time where he was really pushing himself as an actor. Like he did The Nines, he did Buried, he did The Voices.
And he did it at the same time that he was doing, like, he was still trying for things like Green Lantern. Right. And
Mississippi Grind. Mm-hmm. Mississippi Grind's another one where he's like, yeah, he's terrific in those movies. Like, he's really good. Like, it's performances that really are complex and nuanced. It's like, yeah, this guy can really be a great actor. And it kind of ended with the first Deadpool movie because it's like that's like the big success. Like after all this time, Ryan Reynolds is a lead actor. It's like, what's he gonna do now that he's finally gotten what he was looking for? And like you said, he's just sort of coasting now. Well,
I think he's always kind of been half and half with his roles because like around the time that he's doing really good stuff like Buried or things like The Voices, he does like R.I.P.D.
Sure, you're right.
Or, yeah, he's just always doing something that's kind of just terrible,
Right. He keeps poking his head in the blockbuster and like, you guys want me here yet? And everyone's like, no. It's like, okay, I'll just go back to do Mississippi Grind.
In 1 year, he'll do a movie like Life, where he's just kind of a bit role and kind of a fun bit role in an okay movie. But then he'll do something like Hitman's Bodyguard, which people are just like, that's a huge success out of nowhere.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that one, and that's such a mediocre movie and too. And I had forgotten about the sequel as well. But yeah, that's just another, just like Ryan Reynolds is just doing the Ryan Reynolds thing. And then there was also Red Notice last year, which I never finished. So I can't,
Well, he's been in a mode with Netflix where he's done like at least 2 of these where, he did 6 Underground, which he was like,
which is better than this, I think. I know you're going to disagree with that, but
that is nonsense. Absolute nonsense.
At least that movie has some personality. At least like Bayhem comes out. This is just nothing. This is pudding. Like this is just vanilla pudding.
You're going a little bit too far there, I think.
I'm sorry if you disagree, but that's just where I'm coming from right now. I'm turning red.
I think that I think he's just in this mode where he's just himself in all of his movies. And I think he knows that that's the way to do it.
A variation of himself, at least his on-screen self. I don't know what he's like in real life.
Like if we had to say like if he's time traveling like different versions of himself along the same spectrum, because he isn't that different. Like I think Free Guy was one of those movies where I think he was a bit different. Like that was more of a performance because he was like playing an avatar, but still is kind of a version of himself, right?
but then you get like a movie like this, and it's like kind of compelling if you look at it in that way, because he's literally like going back to his younger self, and there is like this weird sort of like mix of pithy self-loathing, but also sort of like reflexive sort of like self-aggrandizing, because he's like literally like making fun of himself, like being like, oh, you suck, me, how dare you. But then like he'll have his kid self being like, hey, you're looking kind of swole, NGL, and he'd be like, oh, thanks, man.
That's kind of funny. Well, one thing that I did appreciate about this movie toward the end of it was there is a moment where the kid kind of is able to teach him a little bit and be like, you don't remember stuff,
you don't say.
And
his younger self is teaching him a lesson.
Well, I think it's a little obvious, but I thought that there was like a nice way in with that. A little bit of like, there was something about how we like sort of fool ourselves into thinking things were a certain way. And that is something that the kid can offer him of like, you don't remember this because you've repressed it. And you want to believe this narrative about your upbringing, because there was a little bit of poignancy there. I wouldn't say it was profound, but it was nice in a movie that I think otherwise is a lot of mumbo jumbo that I didn't care about.
And yeah, again, that's what I mean by like, you can take this premise and make a really thoughtful film, and it doesn't have to sacrifice the entertainment value, but you can get like an Edge of Tomorrow type movie where it's, fun and it kind of plays with time travel in an interesting way, but it still has something to say and has, something that can do that's unique to the genre. And it just seems like Sean Levy as a filmmaker is just so mediocre that he just can't really communicate that. Like I said, there's no established stakes. There's no sense of conflict. Everyone is quipping to the max, and it feels like we're just like at the state now with movies where people don't really want to be challenged or confronted with any sort of like genuine dilemma. They just kind of want passive passive entertainment that they can watch on Netflix while they're texting or cocaine or doing whatever they're doing. And it's like, okay, that's fine, but that's not a movie. That's just entertainment, the content. And I guess I think you're being a little bit too harsh, because I think there is some stuff in here. I don't think that it fully connects, and it's like all that. Well, like I don't think this is going to last the test of time or anything. But sure not. Yeah,
I don't know. You're making it sound like it's just like nothing, like it's just mush, and I don't know.
It is mush.
Nah, there's heart in this movie. There is like a little bit. And I don't even think there's a lot of heart with the main characters. And I actually was feeling it when, there's certain moments between Ryan Reynolds' character and Zoe Saldana's character that like, there's a real emotion there. Again, I'm not going to go too far and say that it's great or anything, but
I mean,
there's a little bit. There's fun to be had.
If you want me to compliment the movie, there are some things I do like, and it's primarily with Mark Ruffalo, who he's not given a Oscar-worthy performance here, but he does, whenever he comes into the fold, this movie does pick up a little bit. There's a little bit of a spark here, and I do think he does have decent chemistry with Ryan Reynolds, but more so, he has this little nice, lovely chemistry, reunited chemistry with Jennifer Garner, and they only have one scene together, but it's a nice little moment, and it's like, okay, maybe if they done stuff like this a little bit more, maybe there's something here. Maybe we got a movie. Maybe we're cooking here. But
I'm glad they didn't make the joke though. That like this movie is 30 going on 13.
Yeah,
too obvious, too easy.
I was waiting for someone to do that on Letterboxd, and I don't think I've seen anyone do it.
Oh, I'm sure somebody has by now.
Yeah, but because I was like, I thought about that joke, and I was like, yeah, someone's probably made that already. I didn't make it, but if no one has,
okay, free, I'm looking at it right now. It's literally the number one most popular review on Letterboxd.
I figured someone had done that. Yeah,
Sean Levy really should have called this 30 going on 13 instead. Perfect.
Right. Yeah, so I figured someone had done that right. But I don't know. I mean, for me, I just get frustrated with stuff like this because, like you say, it's mostly just mediocre. Like, it's just fine. It's whatever. It's not incompetent to the point where it's like, inaccessible or whatever. But it just doesn't feel like much of anything to me. The heart that you see in this movie, it just mostly eludes me, I guess, because I just don't. I see the calculations being made, and I just don't really see the emotion or the humanity it's really putting in there. And okay,
where I can sort of get on your wavelength is I do weep for the current state of Netflix original movies, where I do get annoyed that it just feels like they're making content. They're not really making art up very often. And I think that, they're just sort of like, they're creating what's the equivalent of background music for people.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
And part of me is sort of like, I don't want to say upset about that, but a little bit like, yeah, that's not ideal. But I do appreciate in some ways that like Netflix does sort of open the floodgates for a lot of original projects. It's just like a lot of the really good stuff we're getting from Netflix, it really does come from their shows. It's like their shows, far and wide, like there are a lot of really good ones. Some of them are also just like background TV shows, I guess, but they are making like pop culture defining things right now. But in terms of movies, not so much. I think the movies are just so lowest common denominator most of the time, unless it's award season and they have like, this is like one of our like A-list movies, right?
We're going to give Martin Scorsese a check. We're going to do something with Alfonso Cuarón.
We're going to make, you know, we're going to make Mitchell's versus the Machines, Will Ashton's favorite movie of 2021, you know, like
I mean, certainly Mitchell's versus Machine is better than this. Certainly.
I got that out of this review, so I'm happy there. We should probably move on to the Rotten Tomatoes game because we've kind of run steam a little bit on this.
I'm unfortunately kind of pressed for time, but I was going to say it is kind of funny to me that, you know, the first movie, Turning Red, a movie about, you know, a daughter and mother having some, you know, mom issues. And then we got a movie this time where we got, you know, a man, his younger self with his dad, you know, having some dad issues. So we got something for everybody, I guess.
I'd say most movies boil down to parental problems. Like, I think that's pretty fair, isn't it?
Well, if I could be Freud, I'd say that boils down to human psychology in general. But yeah,
all right, put the tweed jacket back on the shelf. We gotta,
but I do also think it's funny that we got a movie with a Canadian actor playing an American who says sorry, and then we got a movie set in Canada where an actress says sorry. I think she says sorry and sorry. So I was just like, what topsy-turvy world? Yeah,
I'll pay attention for that. Yeah.
Well, it's like in the one scene, I also forgot to mention that, I don't know if this is a spoiler, but I also really appreciate that Turning Red is to date the only Pixar movie that is partially a kaiju movie. So it's like, you know what, that was another thing that I really appreciate. But yeah, at one point during that scene, I think she says sorry and sorry. And it was just kind of like, Well, she says both, but
what country are we in? We don't know. Maybe that happens in Canada. Maybe people aren't as monolithic as we like to think. So. Huh?
Yeah, but Ryan Reynolds only says sorry, so it was just like, oh, what are we doing here?
All right. Well, let's play the Rotten Tomatoes game. My interpretation was that just like everyone's Canadian in the future, hence the dystopia. But whatever.
Yes. That's our takeaway this week. Everyone's Canadian.
Weird week. I think because the Batman has been playing in so many theaters and it's been doing pretty well, there's like nothing really new theatrically, except for like, I think there was like one thing that like nobody really knows about.
Was Turning Red supposed to be theatrically released this week, or did they move it up?
I think the limited run is already going on. Yeah.
No. But I mean, like when it was going wide, was it supposed to come out this weekend? Or was that
I don't know. I know it was March, but I don't know if it was this weekend or last weekend.
Yeah.
A little too far away in the past for me to remember, but it was definitely around this time. But yeah, that's why we're talking about 2 streaming releases. An Adam Project you can stream on Netflix. It's an hour and 46 minutes. On Rotten Tomatoes, we have 133 reviews counted. Not a lot, but what do you think the RT score is, Will?
72%?
69%.
Okay.
Nice. And it was 70, and it dropped 1 point, basically.
We got Ryan Reynolds over here making a 69 joke.
All right. And
in
then
this wholesome episode.
Otherwise, audience score, we have 250 plus ratings. What do you think?
78%.
81%. You're in the margin of error a lot this week, so you're doing all right. But let's see if your last chance for a spot on. Letterboxd, we have 15,000 watches. Not a lot either. I was expecting more on Letterboxd, but nope.
Yeah.
But what do you think the average rating is?
2.5.
3.2. I hoped. I think a lot of people are giving this like between 2.5 and 3.5 stars. Lots of threes, basically. Much to your chagrin. Although my Netflix, I'm seeing plenty of 2s and 2.5s, like more so.
I was gonna say I saw a lot of 2s and 2.5, so it's probably like a 2.5 average. But
I think critics are pretty mixed on it. But I think audiences are like, Adam Projects, sign me up. I'm in. Okay. That's it for our show this week.
All right.
Next week, we're in the thrust of South by Southwest, so I haven't really looked at what's coming out next week besides like some indie stuff.
There is the Deepwater coming up on Hulu.
I know The Outfit is coming up. Do you want to see that? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
It's going to be a bit of a. Is it going to be a bit of a grab bag? You think? Because there's not anything like really major, unless I'm forgetting something.
well, like I said, Deepwater is a big one for me because that's I'm very curious about what that movie is.
It looks like Uma is going to be coming out. That's a horror film.
They didn't promote that movie at all. I don't know. Is that like a Sam Raimi produced movie?
I don't remember. I know Sandra Oh is in it.
Yeah.
But Sam Raimi is the producer.
X is coming out.
X from the A24. Yeah. With Mia
which is
Goth.
also going to be at the South by Southwest.
Yeah.
It looks like Alice, which we both saw at Sundance, is coming out.
Yeah, it's just like a bunch of little things. There's like Cheaper by the Dozen. The one that's going to have what's his name, Zach Braff.
What?
Yeah, the remake.
This is coming. What?
Yeah, it's going to be on Disney Plus.
I did not hear about this at all.
No.
Wow. Is he supposed to be playing the same character that Steve Martin played in the other remake? Oh, okay.
How far we've come, right?
Yeah.
A bunch of little things. I'm not sure which of these movies we're going to focus on, but we'll have to find out soon, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess we'll find out next week.
Yeah. But until then, we'll see you all in the next one. Thank you as always for listening. From the Internet California, I'm John Agroni.
And for Internet Pennsylvania, I'm Washington.
See you next time.